So welcome to all. We will start this webinar in a few minutes. We just wait a bit of time to have everyone connecting. So welcome to all of you. We have a few more participants, just to let you know that we will start in a minute, but we're just letting time to everyone to arrive. And I can see that the number of participants is still increasing, so we will wait a bit more. Okay, we still have a few people connecting, but maybe we can already start. So Sophie, I give you the floor.
Okay, thanks. So hello everybody. So it's we are here for the webinar for all applicants for this first call of the Biodiversa Plus partnership on supporting biodiversity and ecosystem protection across land and sea. So there will be different speakers depending of the thematic sessions. So the webinar will last around 1 hour 30. The speakers will be Hilde Egermont from BELSPO, with the chair and coordinator of Biodiversa Plus partnership, Claire Blairy, with Chief Executive Officer of Biodiversa Plus Partnership from FRB, and I, Sophie German, and Juliette Betus from ANR, the French funding organization, as part of the call secretariat for this first call for Biodiversa Plus Partnership. So just to give you a brief overview of the program of the webinar, first there will be an introduction. So a quick presentation of Biodiversa Plus Partnership, how a joint call functions. And then there will be 3 different thematic sessions, followed by each time by a Q&A session. So the first thematic session will be on topic and scientific content of the call. The second one will be on the types of projects funded and expectations toward applicants. And the third and last one will be on the call process and eligibility rules. And then there will be a conclusion part. Regarding the webinar instructions, so for your information, the webinar will be recorded, is recorded, and will be available in replay. The audio is available only to the presenters. And so as already said, there will be several Q&A sessions to answer your questions. So to ask your question, you will have to use your Q&A function. And if possible, please ask questions only related to the ongoing thematic session. It will be easier for us to deal with all these questions, as you are like more than, for now, you are on, around 500. And the question related to the funding organization regulations will be forwarded to the corresponding funding organization contact points. So some questions may be answered individually by email after the webinar due to its specificity. So you can see here where you can ask the Q&A, your questions. So you can type your question and we will try to answer them as far as possible. So now I will let the floor to Hilde for the introduction.
Thank you, Sophie, and also many thanks for all of you that are joining. I indeed see we are close to 500, so that's really great. Before we start digging into the thematic sessions, I will indeed say a few words on Biodiversa, the new European Biodiversity Partnership that just started on the 1st of October, because that will also be the new context that we will work in for the decade to come. Next slide, please. This partnership is actually building on Biodiversa that many of you might know because of the previous calls that we have launched. So far, Biodiversa has launched 10 calls for research proposals for a total budget of 237 million euros. And that allowed us to fund 125 collaborative projects with a few thousand of scientists that have been funded over the years. Next slide, please. Now, Biodiversa, it was a network that was already existing since 2005. And while research programming and funding has always been at the heart of our activities, over the years, we have also increasingly invested in stakeholder engagement activities, valorization activities, science policy interfacing, and also an increased international dimension. And actually, this is also what Biodiversa Plus, the new Biodiversity Partnership, will build on. So this is a new tool under Horizon Europe, the new framework program of the European Commission, that will allow us to further expand our activities to be more sustainable and also more strategic and more ambitious and have more impact, hopefully also on the long term. So in terms of the network, it is substantially expanded. We have now 75 members on board from 37 countries. And these are both research policymakers, but also environmental policymakers. So also in terms of membership, we are more diverse than Biodiversa. Also, the budget is quite substantial. We have a big budget for the years to come. And of this budget, around 64% will still go to the funding of research. So you will be able to benefit from this increased budget envelope. Also, in terms of the portfolio of activities, we will not only focus on the funding of the joint calls, but there will also be a significant component focusing on biodiversity monitoring activities. And more specifically, we aim to support a transnational network of harmonized biodiversity monitoring schemes, building on existing national and subnational schemes. There will also be a component focusing on supporting the development and the deployment of nature-based solutions, connecting with the private sector, also more science-based policy support functions, and also internationalization, being more relevant for the IPBES, for biodiversity-related conventions, and also a better connection with, for example, global research infrastructure. So all of this is to be implemented over a time window of 7 years. And this partnership is also part of the EU Biodiversity Strategy 2030. So it is integrated in the strategy to make the link between science, policy, and practice. Next slide, please. So all these activities that I have just mentioned, they will actually feed a general vision and all the general objectives that we also see reflected in the current EU Biodiversity Strategy 2030, but also with what we see emerging currently in the context of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. So this is just to say that whatever we do, of course, will match and align with the new policy context. Next slide, please. Then all our activities, not only the joint calls, but also the monitoring activities and also activities that relate to science policy interfacing and internationalization, will be guided by a new strategic research and innovation agenda that will actually be launched only in mid-November, although we already have it, but it's still internal. And this is actually the document that will guide the broad research and innovation priorities for the activities over the years to come. You can just keep pushing on then see what appears. So here you can see the different topical themes and the cross-cutting themes that we have identified. And these themes are basically also themes that indeed you see reflected in the EU Biodiversity Strategy 2030, themes that are both groundbreaking for science, but also that are action-oriented, and so that we can have an impact for society and for policy, and also themes that will allow us to mainstream biodiversity across sectors and across policies. And this agenda has also been co-developed by a wide range of stakeholders. And as you can see, the theme of the first call is strongly aligned with the topical theme 1, which is focusing indeed on biodiversity protection. And the other themes will be covered by the next calls that we will launch over the years to come. Next slide, please. And this is just to say what we plan in terms of support for research is that we plan 6 co-funded calls. So it means co-funding by the European Commission that also co-designed the partnership over the 7 years. Each call will have an amplitude of over 40 million euros. As such, we hope that we can support over 30 transnational projects each year. So that's a bit what we aim for. It can be maybe more. We have to see how things evolve over the next few years. So I will leave it here and I will give the floor back to my colleagues.
Thank you, Hilde. And so we would like just to quickly present you how does a joint call work. So you can move to the next slide, Sophie. Because the joint call we are talking about is a joint co-funded call between different funders and the European Commission. And we would like to explain the principles for such a call. So basically you have different funding organizations gathering. And in the case of this call, there is also co-funding from the European Commission. And so this organization decides jointly to launch a call. So you can click, Sophie. And by doing so, they agree on a single evaluation process for the proposals that will be submitted under this call. And this evaluation process, which is made by an independent evaluation committee, as we will present later on, will allow to establish one single ranking list of the best projects submitted within the call. And the funding organizations who decided to participate in this call will fund the best top projects strictly following the ranking list established by the independent evaluation committee. So this means that in this type of calls, even if you have different funding organizations, national or regional funding organization participating, there is no national pre or post selection. The funding organization really stick to the evaluation made at the level of the call jointly. So this is a bit for the context. And with this, we can move to the first thematic session of today to present the content of the call. And Hilde, I give you back the floor.
Thank you, Claire. Next slide, please. So first, a little bit on the context, although I will be brief on that. So we know that despite all the ambitious targets that we have both at the international level, but also at the European level, that we still see that biodiversity is declining at unprecedented rates. We also see that assessments of species and habitats protected under the Habitats Directive still revealed that 60% of the species and 77% of the habitats remain in unfavorable conditions. So there's still a lot of work to do. We also know that the most important drivers of biodiversity loss are indeed land and sea use change and also direct exploitation, of course, also in the context of climate change. And that this can be managed through effective area-based conservation with indeed connected systems of protected and conserved areas. The conserved areas, we also call this now these other effective area-based conservation measures. And we also recognize, and that's also important in the context of the call, that increased connectivity between environmentally friendly areas and these protected and conserved areas will be very important because they will facilitate migration of species. They can counteract possible extinctions, and in the end, indeed, they can also conserve response diversity of species and so increase the resilience of the ecosystem. So it's not only about, I would say it's not only about area-based conservation, it's also about species-based conservation that is very important. You also see this very strongly reflected in the EU biodiversity strategy that speaks to a truly coherent trans-European nature network, where we see targets appearing of protecting 30% of land and sea by 2030 and also 10% of land and sea under strict protection. And we also see the 30 by 30 target appearing now in the context of the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. So this call is very timely. Next slide, please. So in terms of the general priorities of the call, first of all, it is indeed to advance the knowledge and inform more effective and integrative biodiversity management by enhancing the scientific underpinnings of biodiversity and ecosystem protection, but also to really create science-based policy support for measures regarding protected areas, including also nationally designed protected areas. Also to develop the integrated area-based conservation measures that can indeed reconcile conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity and ecosystem services, as well as measures that indeed contribute to protect species, to really to enhance and to increase the conservation toolbox. When it comes to protecting species, we do emphasize that this call focuses on protection in the wild. And this is, of course, because our resources are limited, so we had to manage expectations, and so we had to restrict the scope somehow. So that is why we decided not to embark, for example, on research focusing on ex situ conservation. And also we want to make clear that this is really about protection and not about restoration. We have currently a call running that is focusing specifically on restoration. So this is and actually complementary and focusing more on protection issues. Yeah, you can keep clicking, just looking. Then indeed all environments are eligible, which means freshwater, terrestrial and the marine environment. But we also emphasize that it needs to go beyond single study sites. So there needs to be some upscaling. And it also covers research in the outermost regions and the overseas countries and territories of the EU. Next slide, please. And then I come to the three themes of the call. You can just keep clicking so they all appear on the screen. So the first theme is focusing on, so the proposal should address one or more of the following themes. The first theme is focusing on knowledge for identifying priority conservation areas, establishing effective and resilient ecological networks, and also enhancing species-based protection and preserving genetic diversity. So basically this theme is about, for example, knowledge to identify areas that are important for conservation. It is also focusing on how we can develop multifunctional landscapes, recognizing indeed that there's also importance of habitats outside protected areas and approaches that will support nature inclusive transitions. This is also about ecological networks, how we can make them future-proof, how we can ensure ecological representation, how we can broaden the range of area-based conservation, but also how we can enlarge the toolbox also for species-based protection. So all of this is covered under this first theme. So it's quite encompassing. Then the second theme is more focusing on the multiple benefits and the cost of biodiversity and ecosystem protection, and also how we can increase synergies and how we can also identify trade-offs and actually move more to win-win situations. So how can we identify trade-offs between biodiversity protection and productive use of natural resources? So this is indeed focusing on positive and negative impacts of conservation, on costs and benefits from different conservation strategies, on integrated protected area management, and also on landscape and seascape approaches, and also on developing and testing broader metrics to create incentives. So the economic and social economic metrics to create incentives for conservation. And then the third theme is then focusing more on how we can actually make governance more effective and more equitable to deliver bold conservation outcomes. And so this is focusing on how we can create effective and adaptive management strategies, how we can make things more inclusive, what are the motives for protection and what are the influence of power constellations upon these, and also how can we reinforce right-based approaches. So the first theme is more about area-based conservation and species-based conservation. The second theme is more about cost and benefits, synergies and trade-offs. And the third team is focusing more on effective management and governance strategies. So this is a bit in a nutshell, most of the details and also possible knowledge gaps that you could cover through your proposals or further elaborated in the call text. So I think now we can just briefly open for a few questions on the content before we move more to the technical details of the call. So I'm happy to take some of your questions.
Okay, so we have received quite a few questions in the Q&A section. One of the questions, Hilde, is about the call text. So the call covers all environments, example of terrestrial, freshwater and marine. It also covers research on biodiversity conservation in the outermost regions and overseas countries and territories of the EU. Does this mean that the call is for research focused in the EU exclusively, or can other countries in the Global South be part of the case studies of a research proposal?
This will also come back in some of the slides, I think, that will be presented next. But indeed, you can have study sites that are not located within the European Union or in Europe more generally. So you can have case studies that are located in the Global South. The only thing is that the research needs to have a pan-European added value. So as long as you can illustrate that, there is no problem that you have study sites that are located elsewhere. And most notably, because we also have international partners that will be part of the funding organizations. So of course, their teams will also be part of some of the research consortia, so they can have study sites in their own country. So that's not a problem.
Okay, thank you, Hilde. We also have another question. Does the call include agricultural areas such as meadows?
That's a bit a question that we really have to frame very well, because indeed we mentioned that it's not only about protected areas, it's also about the intermediate matrix. But we want to make clear that if you focus on other more nature inclusive approaches, it really needs to be framed in the context of increasing the size, the effectiveness, the ecological resilience, and also the ecological connectivity of protected and conserved areas. So you really need to see it in the theme of biodiversity protection. So if you focus, for example, also on wildlife friendly approaches, on human-wildlife coexistence and on nature-inclusive design, please really put it in the context of ensuring a long-term persistence of species and ecosystems in a changing landscape. So it's not just enough to focus on nature-inclusive approaches, but really put it in the context of resilience of these ecological networks. So that's quite important, because I think indeed many will try to build in some agroecological approaches maybe, which is okay, but just keep in mind that it needs to fit the overall context of the call.
Thank you, Hilde. So we have quite a lot of questions. One is, does the call cover other effective conservation measures which are not strictly just PAS, or I don't know?
Yes, it does. So it's not only about protected areas, but also what they call the other effective area-based conservation measures. So basically what this is a geographically defined area that is not a protected area, but that is governed and managed in such a way that it can still achieve positive and sustainable conservation outcomes. So this is also included, because we know this is a concept that is now very heavily promoted and well known. And so this is indeed only covering these type of concepts and areas. So it's not only about protected areas.
Okay, thank you, Hilde. We have another question. So in terms of upscaling the research sites, what scale is required, as in our field sites required to be in more than one country?
And indeed, so we are targeting transnational research projects. So we also aim for study sites in different countries, so that we can indeed upscale according to biogeographical regions, but also according to socio-economical context. So it is important that you do not just stay in a single country, but that you have study sites that can create this pan-European added value. So that's key to be actually eligible to apply to the call.
Okay, so we have time for a bit more questions. Does the call need to address all these 4 points? So I think it refers to the to the 4 points, maybe the themes.
It's possibly the teams. No, yeah. So it's the thing is that if it needs, your research proposals need to address one or more teams. So if they address the 3 teams, it's okay. If they address only one team, it's also okay. And one is not better than the other. So it's not because you're targeting 3 teams that your proposal will have a better score, because there are other criteria that are playing when we do the evaluation. My colleagues will elaborate on that. But if you focus on one team, that could also be enough. As long as you apply to all the comply to all the other criteria and needs, then it's okay.
Okay, so I'm just trying to find the questions because there are quite a lot. So sorry, because it's moving. Could we focus only on one species, for example, to improve habitat statutes for the conservation of one species?
That's not a problem, as long as indeed you make sure that you comply to all the other aspects. And I mean, if you frame it well, and if it has a policy impact and it has a societal impact, then I think it's not a problem that it's only focusing on one species. If you would, for example, only focus on the return of the wolf, but then you include several aspects related to this, and this is not a problem. So the answer is, yeah, no restriction on that.
Okay, and so another question related to theme 2 mostly, but also in general, is a fact-based research on the role of SMEs, example ecotourism, in protecting biodiversity and ecosystems, a relevant topic approach to consider?
I think so. I mean, I don't see why it would not fit into this team. Also, so as said, we do not only aim for academic, I mean, excellent research, but indeed, if there is a relevance for society, and if we can engage with the private sector, I think that would be very good. So I just hope I understood the question correctly, but indeed, I mean, this could be very relevant.
Okay, so another question, can projects which mainly focus on the technical development be funded? Example of developing a device that monitors dangers to ecosystems via molecular biology methods.
That's a bit more tricky, because that's not really, I would say if it's a facet of the project, it could be okay. But if that's the key thing where the project will focus on, I think that will be problematic. So we really have to look also into the biological aspects and then see how these tools would actually improve biodiversity conservation. So if it's just technical development, I would say no. But if it can be phrased, I mean, maybe it's an aspect of a proposal, then that could be maybe a useful addition, but not just development of tools. I would say technical development of tools, if it's not put in a broader context and including also the biodiversity components.
Okay, and one last question maybe. Could you expand on the no restoration, not ex situ conservation, as there was a separate call?
It's possible, yeah. So for restoration, indeed, we currently have a call running that is actually now finished, completed, evaluated. So you will hear back from the results very soon. But the thing is that we indeed had a major joint call co-funded by the European Commission focusing on this topic of restoration. And there were even other calls launched, a Green Deal call also focusing on this topic. So restoration is actually not part of the portfolio of projects that we will fund. Of course, there can be some aspects that relate to restoration, but it's not the core theme of this call. This is really focusing on protection. And then when it comes to in situ, ex situ conservation, we decided to indeed restrict to conservation in the wild, because otherwise indeed we can see that we could maybe double the number of proposals that we would receive, and we have to keep things manageable. And also, of course, we want to have projects who have a reasonable success rate. So we just decided that we had to restrict somewhere. So that is why we decided to focus on protection schemes in the wild and not ex situ.
Okay.
But this does, maybe just briefly, this does not exclude that we will fund this in future calls, but this is just for this specific call that this is not eligible.
Thank you, Hilde. So we have still quite a lot of questions in the Q&A, but maybe we can answer these questions a bit in writing and move on to the next part of our session. Would that work for you, Hilde?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Many thanks.
Thank you, Cécile. So I think we can do the next thematic session. Sophie, can you move to the next slide, which is about the types of projects that will be funded within this call and the expectations we have towards applicants. So you can move to the next slide. So first, in terms of types of projects funded, we would like to highlight that in the context of this call, we aim at funding average projects of average size. Based on our past experience in Biodiversa calls, usually we fund projects of medium size with a global budget of 1.2 to 1.5 million euro on average. So it's not compulsory. You can have a smaller or higher budget, but on average, this is the size of the projects we fund. And usually also we have projects including 5 partners from different countries on average. As you will see, the minimum is 3. But usually, on average, we have a bit larger consortium. So this, what you see also on this slide is that this type of call is a good opportunity for you to be part of bigger transnational research projects and to join forces with other teams. While you are your team is not the one putting the whole budget for the project. So you see, we did some analysis, and on average, the individual teams contribute with 231,000 euros, but to join on average 1.2 million euro projects. Next slide, please. So also in terms of types of projects funded, we would like to highlight the type, what we expect from projects. So there are several expectations. First, we expect the projects to be scientifically excellent, to be also multidisciplinary when it's relevant, to demonstrate transnational added value. We started to touch upon this, but also to engage stakeholders and demonstrate political, societal relevance of the research you are proposing. So we really would like to highlight that this may seem like a lot of expectations, but these expectations are at the level of the whole project and not at the level of each research partner within a consortium. So you really have to make sure that overall within your consortium, you have the right expertise to meet these different expectations, but we don't expect this from each single partner within one project. And so you will see that these different expectations that we have are also reflected in the assessment criteria that we will use. So maybe you can click and move to the next slide. So we'll indeed use specific evaluation criteria within the call to assess that the project submitted meet the expectations we have. So at step 1, we will use 3 criteria, which are fit to the scope of the call, novelty of the research, and expected societal and policy impact. And at step 2, we will use the following criteria: excellence, which corresponds more to scientific excellence, quality and efficiency of the implementation, and impact. And by impact here, we mainly mean societal and policy relevance of the research and approaches to stakeholder engagement. We really invite you to have a look at the sub-criteria under each of these criteria to have more detail on what will be exactly evaluated. And you can consult these assessments criteria in the call documents that you will find on the Biodiversa website, and you will see the details under each criteria. So make sure to refer to this to have a better understanding of what we mean for each of these criteria for each step. Next slide, please. And I just would like to come back on an aspect, which is the transnational added value, which is, as we said, something that we expect from the projects to be funded, and that will be evaluated. You will see in the details of the sub-criteria that is evaluated both at step 2, both as part of scientific excellence, but also as a part of the impact. And so we would like to explain a bit more what we mean by this transnational added value, which mean that you should be able to show clear evidence of the added value of the projects you are submitting. But this added value can be direct because you're involving different countries within your consortia, but there can also be, indirect transnational added value because you are learning from models applied to countries outside of your own country, for example. So you have here small examples which are not exclusive of what we mean by transnational added value. So it can be that you can demonstrate relevance of your project to internationally policy statements or processes. It can be also that because you're linking expertise and efforts across national teams or across studied areas or research models, you demonstrate a clear added value as compared to a national project. The transnational added value can also be about bringing comparisons at the local level between researchers and stakeholders who are not used to work together. If you are also working towards standardizations of methods, this can also be considered as a transnational added value, or if you contribute also to a general increase of common knowledge in biodiversity, that is linked also to the teams of the call. So keep in mind that this notion of transnational added value can be has multiple facets. Next slide, please. And so we would like also to highlight a few useful guidance documents that we developed and that can help you in preparing your proposal. Next slide, please. The first one is what we call the Stakeholder Engagement Handbook, which is a handbook that can help you identify relevant stakeholders to engage with to enhance the impact of your work. This is a tool that will give you concrete tools and guidance on why to engage stakeholders, who these stakeholders could be, when to engage stakeholders, how to engage them with concrete methods for engagement, how to plan for the engagement, and how to manage conflicts, possible conflicts with stakeholders. So we invite you to have a look at these resources that you can download on our website. You have the link here. Another resources that we would like to highlight, next slide please, is the policy guide, which is another guide that we developed that will help you understand what is policy relevance of research and what are the criteria that we use to evaluate policy relevance of research in our calls. And you will also find some concrete tools in these guidance documents to identify the most relevant policies and policy-making bodies, and to help you state what policies your relevant might be relevant, and how to value the contribution of your projects to these policies. So you can also download this guide on our Biodiversa website. Next slide, please. We also would like to highlight another resources that we developed, which is the Citizen Science Toolkit. So maybe this one is a bit more specific to the project that are considering including citizen science either in their research projects. In case you would like to consider this, this toolkit may help you to get a better overview and understanding of what citizen science is. Also figure out the benefits of adopting citizen science approaches in your research projects. You will also find there a list of most relevant publications and useful tools to do citizen science. And you will also discover many examples of citizen science projects and testimonies from researchers that will also hopefully help you overcome the most common perceived challenges of citizen science. So again, this guide is available on the Biodiversa website for download. And one last guide we would like to highlight, next slide please, is a guidance document we did, which is related to data management and open science. Because as you will see also in the context of this call, we encourage open sharing of research data to increase the transparency of the research processes and robustness of the results. And that's why as applicants, you will be requested to submit preliminary data management information in your pre-proposals and a first data management plan in your full proposals. And so to help you develop this, we have developed jointly with the Belmont firm this guidance document in which you can learn more about the main principles and policies for data management, but also in which you can find existing tools and resources also to help you in this step, and to get also clear advices on how you can write a data management plan. And so again, this resource is available online on the Biodiversa website, so do not hesitate to download it. And with this, I think that's it for this second thematic session, and we can take a few questions.
Thank you, Claire. So now we are open for questions on the types of projects funded and expectations towards applicants. So please put your questions that are related with this topic in the Q&A section. One question that we could answer, Claire, is speaking of added value that needs to be demonstrated, should we include quantifiable indicators in the proposal document to demonstrate the added value we are aiming for?
I would say that this is up to you to see what is the best approach for you to demonstrate added value. It can be both because you have some clear indicators to put forward, or because you have a narrative to also explain the added value. So this is up to you to see what is the most appropriate.
Okay, thank you, Claire. We have another question. So regarding expectations to applicants, you will have special considerations for early career researchers, example of evaluate CVs, taking into account career stage.
The involvement of early career researcher is not a criteria per se. So in the criteria which is related to the quality of the implementation, the evaluators will have a look at the composition of your consortium and make sure that you have the proper skills to implement the activities you are planning. But the fact that you are including early career researchers is not a specific criteria that will be looked at.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Another question, should partners come only from academia, and should the consortium be made by both academics and practitioners?
So again, this is a bit up to you. So the consortium can include both researchers and practitioners. The only thing, and it's also related to the next session we will talk about, is that you have to make sure when you involve partners in your consortia that they are eligible according to the funding organization rules of the funding organization they depend on. So for example, in the context of practitioners, these types of actor may not always be eligible for some of the funding organizations, so be careful about this. But in any case, this is possible to include them, and they can also be included sometimes as self-funded partners or subcontracted partners, depending on what you plan on. But you indeed have the possibility to have a mix of actors involved in your projects.
Okay, thank you, Claire. I also see a question regarding the publication of the chat to include the answers of the questions we are answering. So for that, there is already a fact that is available on the Biodiversa website, and that is easily available. So you can already find quite a few answers to these questions in the FAQ. So another question is regarding the is the gender equality criteria for the project to be funded?
So the gender balance or gender dimension is not included as a criteria per se. So it's not something that would be considered for the evaluation.
Okay. So there is also a question: is the call focusing on use of citizen science approach?
No, so this is something that is up to you to see the best methods you want to include in your projects, also to involve stakeholders. Citizen science is an approach, but it's not mandatory to include citizen science. It's up to you to see if this is relevant for your project.
Okay, so I'm trying to find questions related to the type of projects. So are there specific criteria for selection projects focusing to monitoring?
So no, there will not be specific criteria to select projects related to monitoring. All projects, no matter which team they are related to, will be evaluated according to the same criteria.
Okay. Thank you, Claire. So yeah, I think maybe we can answer this one. Can we subcontract researchers from countries not participating in the call? Or is that up to the national funding organization? So, but maybe this is more about part 3.
We can quickly answer these ones, but you may indeed have a few more information related to this in the next session. But so you can include. I mean, when you want to involve a partner that is not eligible because there is because his or her country is not participating in the call, you have the possibility to either include this partner as a self-funded partner who would have to demonstrate that he has resources to join the project, or you can include this partner as a self-funded partner. But for this aspect, you have to be careful that this is allowed by the funding organization's rules of the country that they will subcontract this partner. The rules for subcontracting are not the same for all the funding organizations participating in the call, so make sure that what you are planning is indeed eligible according to your funding organization rules.
Thank you. So we have another question. How important is interdisciplinarity, both in the project team and within the project's content?
And so it's something that is part of the expectations we have, and we expect projects to be transdisciplinary as needed. So again, the level of transdisciplinary may also depend on the projects on the project you are planning, and depending on the research questions also you want to address, they may be more or less transdisciplinary. But in any case, if relevant for your research projects, transdisciplinary will be looked at carefully in terms of what is planned in terms of content of your project, but also in terms of composition of your consortia, and notably the evaluation committee may have a look at the skills you mobilize within your consortia to make sure that they are that they have the skills to actually implement the project you are submitting, and that you have the different disciplines also involved in case this is needed to answer the research questions you have in your project.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Maybe we can take one last question. So governance is quite a challenge because it relates mostly to agencies and authorities that have legal restrictions to be involved in research, such as EEA or national ministries. How is it intended to be addressed?
So I think maybe this question may be related also to the content of the call, because it seemed that it's more related to how governance is addressed as a topic of the call. I don't know, Hilde, if you want to react on this aspect.
I was actually answering questions, so I didn't hear it. Sorry.
No, there was a question related to governance that is quite complex, and to know, and to know how the governance aspects are also covered by this call, but
Yes.
more from a content point of view.
It's covered by the team 3, so there's indeed a whole team that is focusing specifically on adaptive governance, making it more inclusive, and right-based approaches, and so there's a whole team that is focusing specifically on that. So this type of research would be eligible indeed.
Okay, so now maybe we can move to the next session on the call process and eligibility rules. And we can keep answering questions in the Q&A section, if this works.
Yeah, perfect. So regarding the third and last session on the call process and eligibility rules. So the call process, just to give you an overview, there will be 2 steps. The first step is it's a mandatory submission of pre-proposals through the online platform. Applicants cannot enter the procedure at a later stage. So there will be, I saw some of the questions, there will be only 1 pre-proposals per consortium. Regarding the first step, the process is an eligibility check by the call secretariat and by the funding organizations. And there will be a first evaluation by an independent evaluation committee according to the following assessment criteria. It means fit to the scope of the call, novelty of the research, and impact. Regarding the second steps, if the applicants are invited to the second step, they have to submit a full proposals via the online platform. And then there will be an eligibility check and an evaluation by both external reviewers and an independent evaluation committee according to the following assessment criteria. It means excellence, quality and efficiency of the implementation, and impact. So the pre and full proposal must meet all the formal criteria. It means submitted electronically. So we will send you the link to the EPSS, the online platform, very soon. It will be made available on Biodiversa website. We respect the page limits and the number and types of attachments allowed. So if you want, you can consult the indicative pre-proposal and full proposal application forms available in the call documents on Biodiversa website. Regarding the call schedule, there are 2 main deadlines. The first one for the first step is on the 30th of November 2021 at 3 CET, local time in Brussels. So please do not wait the last minute to submit your pre-proposal. And then if you are invited to the second step, you will receive an answer around mid-February 2022. And then you will have to submit your full proposals on the 14th of April 2022 at 3 CEST local time in Brussels. And also, do not wait the last minute to submit. And then the ones who are invited to the second step will receive the answer around late September 2022 for possible, and the funding projects will start between the 1st of December 2022 and 1st of April 2023 for duration of 3 years maximum. Regarding the participating countries, you will have the updated list of participating countries and funding organization on Biodiversa website. You can see the link here. For now, there are 45 funding organizations from 33 countries for a total funding of over 40 million. And yeah, you will see all the details on Biodiversa website. To enter more in details of the general eligibility criteria, it means the criteria of the call. So regarding the consortium composition, the scientific teams will be invited to form transnational research consortia with eligible research partners from minimum 3 different countries participating in the call and requesting support from at least 3 different funding organizations. It means that it includes at least 2 eligible partners must come from different EU members, states or associated countries participating in the call. So to give you some example, a consortium including research partners from Portugal, Brazil and Norway, it's a consortium who will be eligible because it means there are 2 different EU member states or associated countries. It means Portugal and Norway, and partners from 3 different participating countries, as Brazil is participating to this call. A consortium who will not be eligible, it's a consortium including, for example, research partners from Poland, Taiwan, and Brazil, because there are not 3 different partners, but only there are 3 different partners, but only 1 coming from EU member states. It means Poland. So keep this important call criteria in mind. Regarding the project duration, it's 3 years maximum. And regarding the other general eligibility rules, the project coordinator is eligible and employed by an eligible organization according to the terms and conditions of the participating funding organizations from which he or she applies for support. The project coordinator can, it means the person in charge, can only participate as coordinator in 1 proposal of this call. Apart from the position of coordinators, applicants can participate in several proposals as long as it is in line with the funding organization's eligibility rules. Proposal must be, of course, written in English, and the scope or scale of the proposed research should exceed a single country, as already explained by Hilde and Claire. So what will be the changes allowed between pre and full proposals? First, please keep in mind that the information given in the pre-proposals is binding. So there will be no changes allowed regarding the proposal contents. However, it's still possible to make minor changes to improve your proposals if the objective remains unchanged. You will have thus the possibility to declare these changes in your full proposals. As regards administrative information, only a limited number of changes may be allowed, provided they are in line with the general rules of the call, but also if they are also in line with the rules of the funding organization involved. So minor change of budget can be allowed by the relevant funding organization between step 1 and step 2. And it will be decided by the funding organization involved. There is no need to inform the call secretariat. Also, regarding the changes in consortium composition, so there is no changes of coordinator allowed, except in case of force majeure. In this case, a request of change must be submitted to the call secretariat at least 1 week before the deadline for submitting full proposals. And it will be discussed on a case-by-case basis by the call steering committee. Except for the coordinators, there will be maximum 2 changes allowed for partners if they are requested by the partners and approved by the concerned funding organizations. But keep in mind that the eligibility of the new partners must be confirmed at least 1 week before the full proposal submission deadline. And the changes must be asked first to the funding organization contact point with the call secretariat in copy. We need to check the eligibility and agree with the change before it could be integrated in the online platform. In case of a removal of a partner, consortia have to make sure that the consortium still includes the minimum number of requested partners. If this is not the case, the project will be declared ineligible and won't be evaluated. And also the change should not change the substance of the proposals. Applicants will have to indicate in their full proposals the changes made as compared to the pre-proposals. So it will be for information for the EVC and the call secretariat. So what is considered as a change between step 1 and step 2? It's an addition, a removal or replacement of a partner, including the subcontracting and self-financed partners. So the team members does not, the change in team members does not, is not considered as a change. Also, this won't be considered as a change if a researcher in charge, it means the person remains the same but changes the institutions, provided the institution fulfills eligibility criteria of the same funding organization. And similarly, if the institution remains the same but the researcher in charge, it means the person changes, provided the researcher in charge fulfills eligibility criteria of the same funding organization. And if the change is explicitly requested by a funding organization after the eligibility decision at step 1, this won't be considered as the maximum two changes of partners. Regarding the funding organization financial rules and eligibility criteria, they will be very soon available on Biodiversa website. So as explained by Claire, each national regional funding organization funds its own national regional research partners. So applicants have to comply with their funding organization eligibility criteria and rules. So applicants are strongly advised to read carefully the funding organization rules. And if they still have some questions, they can contact their funding organization contact point to make sure they respect all the eligibility criteria and rules. And if one partner is not eligible, the whole proposal will be considered ineligible and won't be evaluated unless the eligibility issue can be fixed between step 1 and 2. So as said, the rules will be available very soon on Biodiversa website. You can find the link here. So I saw that there was a lot of questions about how to find partners or to join projects. You can use the partner search tool that was developed and made available in last June. Using this link provided here, and you can find this link also on Biodiversa website. You simply have to fill in a partner or project search form on the online platform, depending on your needs. And then your form will be visible on the platform and you may be contacted by other applicants. So yeah, don't hesitate to have a look at the forms also if you are searching for a partner or project. It's a very easy and user-friendly platform, and you can search for partner and projects according to different criteria, country, discipline, and keywords. So that's all for this third and last section. So if you have some question, Cécile, I let you.
Yes, okay, Sophie, we have received quite a lot of questions again.
Yeah.
So one that you could answer is, do we apply to a specific funding source if eligibility varies by source? Oops, sorry. It isn't clear what the process for the application. Do we select a funding source?
So on the online platform, you will have the possibility to indicate the funding organization to which you would like to apply. So depending on the country, So for most of the countries, there is only one funding organization where you can apply to. And for the country where there are multiple funding organizations, it depends of the country. So for some of the country, you will have the possibility, you will only have to apply to both funding organizations, and then the funding organization will decide to which they will they will fund. And for some of them, you will have to apply for only one specific funding organizations. So it will be specified on the online platform, and it will be also be specified on the rules of the funding organizations if you want some more details.
Okay, thank you, Sophie. So then we have another question. So what is the ratio of proposals submitted versus pre-selected when you pass the second step? What are the chances of winning an award?
Yeah. It will really depend on the number of pre-proposals selected. Of the number of pre-proposals submitted. So yeah, we don't know yet for now, because it will really depend on this number. But at least 20% of the submitted pre-proposals will enter the second step.
And overall, I think we can say that based on our experience in past call, on average, we have a success rate between 17 and 20%. So as said by Sophie, it also depends on how many applications we receive, but let's say that on average, we have a success rate around 17 to 20%.
Okay, thank you. Another question, did we have to upload support letter, commitment letter from case study site owner, management, local authorities?
So on the online platform, you will only have to submit a PDF file with the project description and also the letters of support only from the self-finance partners. The other letters of support won't be allowed for this evaluation process. So only the letters of support of the self-finance partners. You can find like some more details in the call text, in the call document, and also the specific question also exists on the FAQ document, which is available online.
Thank you, Sophie. So another question. If I understood correctly, somebody may act as coordinator of one project, but may also participate in other proposals.
I confirm you can only be coordinator of one proposals, and then, but it's possible, but please check also with your funding organizations if you apply to the same funding organization, both as coordinator and both partner in another proposal. Please ensure that it's possible from your funding organization side.
Okay. So another question, may NGO be applicants? Funding capacity is not a problem.
Yeah, regarding the call criteria, of course, it's open to NGOs, private sectors, international organizations, and so on. But then you need to check the eligibility of your NGO to the funding organization you would like to apply to.
Okay, so another question, is there any benefits to having received a previous Biodiversa funding?
No.
Okay, so another question, can two partners from one country participate if at least 3 countries from the consortium? Do you want me to repeat?
Yeah, because it's not.
No problem.
The question: can two partners from one country participate if at least 3 countries form the consortiums?
Yes, that's it.
Can two partners from one country participate at least? So you need really to follow strictly the call criteria I described. You need to have at least 3 partners from 3 different participating countries, including at least 2 from 2 partners from EU member states and associated countries. It's one of the main important call criteria. So you should really strictly follow this rule, and you can find all the participating countries and funding organization updated. There is an updated list on Biodiversa website.
And maybe just to complete, in case the question is also, can you, as long as you have 3 different countries participating, partners from countries participating in the call, can you also have another partner from the same country as one of these 3 countries? The answer is yes, but carefully check your funding organization rules, because sometimes you may have to share the maximum funding amount that is allowed by your funding organization between the different partners that would be involved from your country.
Okay, so another question, is it mandatory to fix the principal coordinator from the pre-proposal step?
Yes. Yes, there is no change of coordinator except of force majeure.
Okay, another question, do we need to provide co-funding?
So it depends of the rules of the funding organization, depending of the country and the funding organization. Some costs may not be eligible to the funding by the funding organization. So in this case, you will need to provide co-funding, for example, for the permanent costs. So it really depends of the funding organization's rules.
Thank you.
And also, just to complement, you will have the possibility to describe the source of co-funding for your project in the online platform. So please also check the application forms if you want some more details about this.
Okay, so another question, does an international organization considered as using the funds of the country it is located, or is there a special provision?
So for the international organizations, if I understood correctly the question, you need to ensure that you, so for regarding the call criteria, of course it is open to the international organization, but then you need to ensure that you are eligible to the concerned funding organizations again.
Okay, thank you. So we have 2 questions that may be a bit related. We have a question on the participation of Italy in the call, and we have the participation of the UK as it is.
Yeah, Italy is part of the participating country. There are 2 funding organizations here, MUR and the province of Bolzano-Bozen. Which are participating to the call. Regarding UK is not participating to the call. So as I explained earlier in one of my answers, you can participate either as a self-financed partner or as a subcontracted partner if it's possible with one of the involved partner and if it's eligible for this partner.
Okay, so there are also a few questions on the funding organizations. Is the funding organizations selecting the eligible partners?
So the eligibility check, which will be done at both steps, step 1 and step 2, will be done both by the call secretariat, who will ensure that all application follow the call criteria and all the limits that I described earlier, and it will be done also indeed by the funding organizations who will check the eligibility of their own national, regional research teams.
Okay, thank you, Sophie. So we have another question. So projects last 3 years or up to 3 years?
Good question. For now, we fixed the duration of the project to 3 years. So it's 3 years.
Okay.
Because we would like to have all, as it's like transnational projects, we would like to have all partners from each consortia starting more or less at the same date and ending at the same date.
Okay, so there is another question. What do you mean by nationality of participants of the consortium? Do you mean nationality passport of the researchers or location of their research organization?
Good question. It's the nationality of the. And maybe Claire, you can correct me if I'm saying a wrong thing, but it's the country of the funding organization you will apply to.
Yeah, so I think it's more the location of your research organization rather than your own nationality.
Okay, so there is a question from a person from Azores who says that it's still unclear who will fund the proposals. If the person submit a proposal, will it be funded by the regional governments or will it be Portugal?
No, it's if it's a research team from Azores, they will need to apply to FRCT, the Azores funding organization.
Okay, so we have another question from someone who has to confirm if she understands correctly. If 5 countries from the south of the Mediterranean Sea have a project that benefits all the Mediterranean Sea, they need at least 2 UN countries, and the coordinator also has to be from the UN.
Yes, I confirm that the coordinator must come from an eligible, must be funded by an eligible funding organization. And yes, there must be at least 2 partners from EU member states or associated country. So you will find the link of the associated countries. If I go back to the presentation here. Up, sorry, here. Here. If you want to move to the next question.
Okay, so
I saw that there are a lot of questions, and
yes,
thank you a lot for all
it's
this.
hard to select. So another question, do you need to find extra funding organizations, or the funding organizations are the ones provided by Biodiversa Plus?
Yeah, it's the one who are listed here. It's the 45 funding organizations. So there are not other funding organizations other than those 45 ones who are listed on Biodiversa website.
Okay. Another question, is there a limit for the number of partners from one country?
At the call criteria level, there is no level, no limit. Then you need to check the rules of your funding organization to check there is no limit here.
Okay, so I see also a question on the Q&A writing. So as I said earlier, you will find on the Biodiversa website the FAQ that you can read, and the webinar will also be available in recording. So another question, when does the EPSS open?
It will open later this week. And you will have the link on Biodiversa website, and you will have the updated information here on Biodiversa website.
Okay, thank you, Sophie. Maybe we can take one very last question. So, does this funding cover the salary of not structured researcher?
So here it really depends on the rules of your funding organizations. I know that there are some funding organizations that can fund the permanent salaries, and some are not. So it really depends of the rules of your funding organization. So as said, they will be made available very soon. So please carefully read them. And if you still have some questions, you can contact your funding organization contact points. And the funding organization contact points, they will be indicated in the rules of each funding organization.
Okay, thank you, Sophie. So maybe we can.
Thank you a lot. So maybe I can conclude, and you can still continue to answer some questions. So sorry, I need to come back to the conclusion part. So here it is. Regarding the conclusion, so first of all, please keep in mind that there are a lot of resources available online. So I invite you to carefully read all documents. So it means the call documents, which are available on Biodiversa website. It includes the announcement of opportunity, the call text, but also the call criteria and a summary of the call process. The pre-proposal and full proposal application form. Only for information, as explained, you will have to submit everything online on the EPSS. The checklist for applicants, the data policy, the assessment criteria that will be used by both the independent panel and the external reviewer, and the conflict of interest, confidentiality, and non-disclosure policy. You will also have the possibility to consult online on Biodiversa website the updated list of funding organizations, and it will be soon be available, the rules and the contact points. And we invite you to check regularly, as explained by Cécile, our FAQ, which is already available online. So if we think that we need to add some questions from the webinar, we will do it and update the document. So regarding the process, so the first steps are to check the projects that you would like to submit enter well the teams and the scope of the call, as explained by Hilde. Then you need to build your consortium, and if needed, you can use the partner search tool. Check the eligibility criteria at both sides, from the call secretariat side and the funding organization sides. Check the national, regional regulations for all members of your consortium. And then, if needed, clarify the procedures with the national contact points and the call secretariat. You will have the possibility to watch a webinar in replay on the Biodiversa website. You can find the link here. And then to enter the last phases of the preparation is to elaborate your proposal according to the call documentation, the instructions provided in the proposal template and in the guidelines of the evaluations. And do not forget to submit your pre-proposals before the 30th of November, before 3 CET. So we really wish you all the best with the preparation of your application, and we remain available if needed. So if you want to have some more information, go to this Biodiversa website. If you need to contact the call secretariat, you will find the address here and the contact point also. And for any issues regarding the online platform, which is not very frequent because it's a very easy online platform to use. You can contact directly Tavitirik to the following address here. So yeah, I really invite you to read carefully all the documents, and then only if you still have some clarifications, you need still some clarification, you can contact the call secretariat and the national regional contact points. I thank you very much, and that's all from my side. So maybe, I don't know if you would like to stay like online to still continue to answer to some of the questions, or otherwise we can update the FAQ if needed. I don't know, because I didn't have time to look at the questions.
Yeah, we still have a few pending. I think we still have 33 open questions.
Okay.
Most content ones are dealt with, but not all. So I can check still on a few, but I can also do it afterwards if we make everything available. I think it's, yeah, because some indeed might be easily answered to the Q&A and others might still need a bit of targeted response from our side. But I guess we can do it when we send, when we publish the outcome of this webinar. No, Claire, I'm just looking at you.
Yeah, sure. I think we can officially close this webinar, and we will try to answer a few last questions in the chat. So if you did not get your answer, you can stay a few more minutes, but in any case, we will officially close the webinar now, and thank you all for your participation. And in case you feel your answers were not answered today, you can also always go back to the call secretariat if it's a general question, or to your funding organization contact points. For your information, the funding organization rules and list of contact points will be published this week on the Biodiversa website. So you will also have the possibility to directly contact your contact points, as many of your questions are also linked to the funding organization rules. So maybe with this, we can thank you all again a lot for your participation, and we wish you all the best with the preparation of your application.
Thanks a lot.